All right, welcome. It's that time of year where weather inundates our opportunities to go out and do a little bit of visual observing as well as astrophotography. And it's Pappy Bowington here. Um, so with that being said, I've spent a little bit of time in the last couple of months playing around with the electronic side of this hobby. You know, I am kind of a tech savvy guy, but I'm also time limited. So if it's all I can do is set up the scope, get some good pictures, process them, and call it good, and have the time just for that, then I actually consider it to be a lucky day. So I don't have much time to dig into the sub menus of the hand controller and toy around with some of the advanced features, but I have been able to here recently, just given the weather. So one of the things I wanted to show you is Stellarium, as many of you already know, can control telescopes, and I've set it up to. I have two scopes. One is a German equatorial with an 8-inch astrograph on it, and the other one is my 16-inch Orion Dobsonian. So what I want to do was show you just something that I did today that may be helpful for y'all, that I think is kind of cool, especially if you're trying to do some of this hobby from the warmth of your kitchen while all the equipment's outside, which is kind of one of my goals. And I've gotten about 80% there, and today I was just working on fine-tuning that. So I've set this up. We're looking at Orion and Sirius, and there's M42 in the belt, Rigel, Betelgeuse, and this is about 8 o'clock local my time in Stellarium. So if I go to configuration, go to plugins, go to telescope control, configure, here's the two scopes that I've set up in Stellarium, and I've got the Dobsonian, which is what we're going to talk about, set up on COM10. Actually, I will tell you, both these scopes are set up on COM10 for now because I don't expect to be controlling them both, although I can. I've done it before. Really, I've got COM10 assigned to Stellarium. So what I've done is I've only got one physical cable leaving this laptop that goes to a serial adapter, and it's plugged into the hand controller on my Dobsonian. But I'm trying to control that Dobsonian with two different applications. Both are going to be fighting for that COM port. And once it's taken by one application, the other application won't be able to gain access to it. So what I've done is used a virtual COM port splitter where I've taken the physical COM port, COM4, and I've split it into COM10 and COM11. So now, and I could add other virtual ports as well, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now I just picked 10 and 11, starting double digits to control my astrophotography, astronomy / apps. So I've used, in my mind, I've assigned COM10 to Stellarium and COM11 to the ASCOM Device Hub. Basically, it's your hand controller that sits on your screen where you can control telescopes. So, and I'll show you that here in a second. So with that being said, I've got my Dobsonian physically connected to this laptop. Now I'm going to connect to it. It says connected, and what's cool is it'll show you, and I pointed it to Sirius earlier, but it'll show you a reticle where it's pointed. In fact, if I pick something, as you well know, Stellarium will highlight it, put a little reticle around it, but all the while you still get your telescope reticle showing where your telescope's pointed. What else is cool, if you go to the search window, let's say I'm way over here and I'm looking at something to target, let's say Capella, because I want to do some focusing, and then I'm like, where the heck is my Dobsonian pointed? Well, I can come over here, and whatever name that I gave to the telescope in my configuration here, I just told it Dobsonian. I could have given it something more specific, but whatever name I've given that telescope, guess what? It'll show up in the search window, and sure enough, I can double click it, and of course, it ain't going to work for me. Let's try this again. Search Dob, and don't know why. Let's try search for M42. So we know the search function's working. Oh, it's because I disconnected the Dob. It stopped. Let's reconnect it. Now it's connected. So back to my example. Let's suppose we're way over here looking at Capella, and I want to say, well, where's my Dob at? Well, I can come over here, search for Dob, double click it, and now Stellarium will slew to where my telescope is pointed. I could select a target. Let's just pick M42 here. And since my Dob was the second scope I configured, Stellarium assigns it scope number 2. So if I press Control 2, the Dob will slew to M42 or whatever it is I have selected in Stellarium. I don't have that being filmed right now, but it's sitting about 25 feet away from me over in the living room. Maybe you heard it slew. Now, here's what's important. I've got Stellarium here on the left with the ASCOM device. Some people call it ASCOM Device Hub over here. And basically, it's your virtual hand controller where you can do some other things, direct slew, you get some information, you can change tracking rates. Basically, through your PC or laptop, you're able to do a lot of the functions that your hand controller will do for you. And you're actually talking directly to the hand controller, giving it commands, much like you would through the keypad on the hand controller. Now, like I mentioned earlier, Stellarium and this ASCOM controller are going to be fighting for that single COM port, but I've used a virtual splitter piece of software that splits that physical port into two virtual ports. And in fact, I showed you that Stellarium I've assigned to port 10. Well, I've assigned the ASCOM controller to, that's not port 10, COM 10, and I've assigned this ASCOM controller to COM 11, which you can see there. So now, here's where I made a little bit of a step today, which is kind of cool. And that is, I can connect now. Of course, over here, your virtual hand controller pops up. It comes with the ASCOM controller. And now I have this ASCOM Device Hub connected to my DOB as well as Stellarium at the same time. And remember, this is talking to the hand controller, and the hand controller is talking back to the application. So if I tell through this virtual pad here, my scope, let's say, hey, let's slew to the right, it will do so, and the hand controller says, hey, I slewed to the right, here's where I think I'm pointing now. Of course, that data pops up here. But guess what? Since Stellarium is also connected and running right now with still connected, the hand controller is also talking to Stellarium. Well, guess what? Is when Stellarium polls the hand controller, and it does it, I don't know, every 5 milliseconds or something like that, and says, hey, where are you at? Well, the hand controller will respond, and then Stellarium will update the reticle. So just to give you an example, let's slew here to the right a little bit. I can hear the scope slewing. You saw the coordinates change here. I heard the scope slewing, and of course you can see the reticle playing catch up. Notice there was a little bit of a jump there because you had to wait for Stellarium to poll the hand controller. I assume that when Stellarium is commanding the hand controller to go somewhere, it polls very, very, very rapidly, which is why you see this reticle moving smoothly. But if Stellarium knows it hasn't sent a command, then it doesn't need to use much processing time to sit there and poll the hand controller continuously. So that's why it does it still fast in human terms, but very slow in computer terms. Conversely, if I pick Rigel and Stellarium and select Control 2, you'll see the coordinates over here change, because remember, the ASCOM Device Hub is also polling the hand controller, asking, hey, where are you at? And of course, you can see it slowly changing coordinates because we are tracking in sidereal rates. So back over to Stellarium, I'm going to press Control 2. We slew to Rigel. No, it's a very, very quick reticle update rate. Why? Because it knows it's sending commands to the hand controller, so it's going to poll it very, very frequently on position. And you probably saw at the same time these coordinates and information over here changed. Interesting, too, they didn't change as fast as they do when this is what's driving the scope. Why? Because, again, I think this software only polls the hand controller. Well, it polls the hand controller much, much less frequently than when it's actually sending out commands. So why is all this important? Well, if I want to do some astrophotography, I use a QX1 that I can control through a smart device, either iPad or iPhone. So I now can control the camera from within my house. I have to actually physically go out and focus my DOB, the 8-inch astrograph on the gem. I don't. I've got a remote focuser, but I'm soon going to add a focuser. But I do have to actually go out, do an alignment, and do focus. But once I've got that done, I can come back inside and say, well, let's just make today's target M42. So I select M42 or somewhere thereabouts, Control 2, the scope will slew to it. And after it takes out the backlash, which, by the way, we can have a whole nother discussion about backlash, but that's why it's slewed past the target and then back to it from the east, and that is to take out the azimuth backlash. So now the hand controller and Stellarium both think the scope is pointing right at M42. So I take a quick snapshot through my QX1, look in my iPad, and go, well, it's not quite centered or it's not framed the way I want it. Well, there's no way in Stellarium to nudge that scope a little bit. Now, you can cheat. I have done this. I've selected a little star here and told it, hey, go there or go here. So I can nudge it around by picking some of these smaller stars to frame my target. But if I really want to just nudge it just a tad, guess what? I now can do that through here or right there through that virtual hand controller. So if I want to give it a slight nudge at half sidereal rate to the right, I can select that, press and hold, and right now the scope is moving. And the reticle in Stellarium you're not going to see move at all this zoomed out. And in fact, remember, it's not polling it as much. But I don't know if you can see that because M42 is bright in the background. But notice how it slewed a little bit off. Let's go to a dark star, or a star with a dark background. Let's go to Control 2. God will slew to it. There it goes past it. Now it's going to take out the backlash. It's going to slew back to it. Now it's on there, and suppose, maybe that's a double star. Notice it's slightly off too. Interesting. Oh, by the way, I just kind of did a not very high quality alignment because the thing is in my living room, so that's why it's slightly off right there. But notice it's tracking. So as the star's moving at sidereal rate, the scope is tracking at sidereal rate. And over here, you would see these coordinates change, not very rapidly, not in real time. Why? Because this program is not polling the hand controller very rapidly because it thinks it's just sitting there doing nothing. So, but suppose now I want to put this star in my field of view, and now I want to nudge the telescope over. I can't do that in Stellarium, but I can do it in this ASCOM Hub device. So let's do, I've got some options under here, under variable, and under here I've got some I can fine tune my control a little bit. So let's just go at 1 times sidereal, and let's nudge this reticle right over the star. Now I'm not sure which of these I need to press, but let's just give it a little bump. You can see the reticle. So east-west, I've got a good adjustment. So let's go a little bit north. Up a reticle, see it jumped a little bit, so let's give it a nudge down. And now you can see, let's give it a little nudge to the east. Wrong direction. So I'm not going to bore you to death, but I would sit here and toy with this virtual hand controller under the ASCOM Hub Device Hub to frame my target in my field of view to my camera the way I want to, which I couldn't do before just using Stellarium. What I'd have to do before in the past is use Stellarium to do a big slew to my target. Again, let's just call it, hey, we want to go over to the Witch's Head Nebula, somewhere over here, Control 2. There she goes. She's going to start slewing over. Notice it went below the target. Now it's going to move up to take out the backlash, the vertical backlash, and it had already taken out the horizontal backlash because it was slewing from left to right. So anyway, so now I'm looking at Witch's Head. What I would have to do now is come to configuration, go to configure, disconnect Stellarium. And once you disconnect, notice we don't have the reticle. Now come over here, connect the telescope, slew, double check my QX1 framing, and then start taking pictures. And then when I'm done with that, come back over here, reconnect. So it was kind of a pain to have to go back and forth. Now what's cool about this is I can use that virtual COM port splitter, which I've split into COM 10 and 11, COM 10 for Stellarium, COM 11 for ASCOM. But now I can create 2 more virtual ports, each for the gem and the gem under Stellarium and the gem under the ASCOM controller. So I've got 4 ports running, 1 each for each program. I'm sorry, 2 for each program, and then each program is controlling a separate scope, and that's how you get 4 total. So anyway, I thought it was interesting. Thought I would share this with you, and that's kind of what I've been messing around electronic-wise. I've also recently installed a focuser. I'll post a video on that. It's the ZWO AEF focuser. Few issues, some things just to think about putting that thing on, and I wanted to post, and I'll process that video sometime soon. See you. Hope you enjoyed. If you like, subscribe. If you got any questions, post below. Thanks.